All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Hastings, and I am super excited to be talking with all of you tonight about chapter 6 and 7 in the microbiome solution. Those of you who know me and those of you who don't, just want to give you a little background. I do actually have a bio degree background on top of the health science and PT degree. So this kind of stuff is totally my jam. I love knowing the science behind the stuff. I know it bores the bejeebers out of some people, so I'll try to use info from the book along with stories so we don't lose anybody, nobody falls asleep, and it's actually useful for you. So, chapter 6, are our bacteria making us fat? Um, so we've noticed over the past several years that the rates of obesity are on the rise. And if we look back to like our grandparents' age versus our age, and we look around, and to me, it's really frightening being in the school system and seeing how many overweight children we have and thinking about, oh my goodness, these kids are going to have bigger problems down the road. And why are they so overweight? Are they not moving enough? Is it what they're eating? What in the world is going on that's making such a difference? So some people will say, oh, well, it's my genes. All of my family's always been overweight. And while that's part of it, it's also a lot of lifestyle habits too. You know, what are your family all eating? What kind of things are you doing in your family? What are you exposing yourselves to? So one of the things that I find frustrating is sometimes, you'll be sitting next to someone and they're eating like a pig, and you've got your celery and your water, and you just walked 10 miles and you gained 5 pounds and they shrunk another 10, and you're like, I hate you. And you want to punch them in the face. Who else doesn't feel that way? I can tell you that. And getting around that perimenopausal age, our hormones change and it does weird things to our body. So it's frustrating. So what can we do about it? If we look at the microbiome, we look at the gut bacteria, people and animals who are more overweight have a different gut microbiome than others who are leaner. And they've actually done some really cool studies. These are really interesting. They've taken some of the bacteria out of both animals, meaning people animals, and lab animals like mice, and they've put them into lean mice, and all of a sudden they start gaining weight. Now, that seems pretty crazy. Why in the world is that? They didn't change their diet, they didn't change their exercise, they didn't change any of that stuff. They just changed their microbiome. So that tells us that there's something to be said about that. So they've also done different studies where they've taken people, like identical twin studies, and taken some of the bacteria in their guts and put them into germ-free healthy mice, and those mice started becoming malnourished. So our systems are set up in a way where that bacteria can cause us to either be overly nourished or underly nourished. Okay. And I've seen examples of this in my own family. So in times where our guts have been a mess, I've had a history of ulcers and all kinds of different things and been on meds for that. And I started to be really iron deficient and my weight was heavier. Why? Weird things were going on in my gut. And with that imbalance, I wasn't able to absorb things. So one of the things that happens when your gut is out of whack, you get a whole bunch of yeast overgrowth. The way that I always like to explain it to people is that yeast doesn't want to die. Okay. It will do weird things with your hormones because it is in survival mode. It is going to fight to the end. And what it wants is it wants to live. So it will tell your body, it actually changes your hormones, changes those microbes in your body so that you crave more carbs, you crave more of those sugary things to feed it. And that keeps a whole weird cycle going on. So one of the ways that you can do that is you can get rid of some of that yeast. Okay. You can change some of that microbiome. Some of the other things that I found interesting is in overweight kids, they found that the beneficial bacteria are lower, like bifidobacteria. And when they found that those kids had a higher incidence of staph and enterobacteria. Those are bad things, guys. So when you, like last week or a couple weeks ago, when I was really mad about my doctor's appointment and I pigged out and I ate a whole bunch of crap, on the way home from Green Bay. I'm gonna be honest with you. Guess what? I got sick. I wasn't able to talk on book club last week because I had no voice, because I was sick, because I was an idiot eating bad things. We all live in the real world. We get it back together and we come back, which leads me back to um, when you're eating a lot of those processed foods, those grains and refined sugars, they cause a lot of that weirdness. And then we get a change in our microbiome. And even if we were to supplement with that, which we have some amazing supplements, a lot of those good gut bacteria don't live very long on their own. So when you get a lot of people asking, why do I need to keep taking this? Doesn't it just repopulate on its own? Some, but they don't live that long. And we constantly are putting bad things back into our bodies that kill them back off again. So it takes a lot of really intense work if you were going to repopulate that and keep that on its own. And I don't know anybody who lives like that. We just can't. Our world is too goofy. So some of the things that also affect that are our super sanitized lifestyles. I mean, what did we go through in 2020? Killing off everything because we didn't know what was going on. So we sanitized the crapola out of everything. We killed off a lot of good bacteria, viruses, bad bacteria, all those things. We killed everything, right? And so then when we started to be able to go back out in the world, so to speak, we didn't have all of those things in our bodies anymore. And if you noticed, a lot of people started getting sick a lot more after that. So that is definitely something that has led to a lot of weird things. And you might have noticed too, people got a lot of COVID weight. Was it because you were sitting home and eating, or was it because we changed a lot of different things in our microbiome because we weren't being exposed to as many things? So then we've got antibiotics. They're a blessing and a curse. They have a great purpose for a reason at a time. And kids who are given antibiotics have an increased risk of obesity later in life. They often give a lot of antibiotics to women too during their pregnancy, because like, especially if you have anything going on with your respiratory system, because your respiratory system is already compromised. They don't want to hurt the baby. They want to make sure you're getting enough oxygen for you and the baby. And unfortunately, that kills off a lot of good gut, not only for you, but for your baby too. Chemicals, triclosan, I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's an antimicrobial agent in soaps, detergents, some toothpaste. It's actually in some Dawn dish soap, guys. So if you're using some of the dish soaps, check your ingredients. It's actually in that. So if you're using that and washing with that all the time, guess what's all over you all the time? Look into that. There's no real benefit to using that. If you're washing long enough and you're using a lot of soap and friction, you're killing off all those germs anyway. So just something to think about. I'm talking about hacking your microbiome. So this is where we come in, and this is where we talked about those bacteria only lasting a little while. The tip that they gave is if we don't eat the right mix of foods to nourish and sustain those microbes, they won't survive or reproduce very long. So when we're on that high processed food diet, we're not getting the complex fibers and those sorts of things that actually are the food for for those probiotics, for those good bacteria. So that's why it's important to have fiber in your diet. If you're not getting enough good fiber in your diet, they're not going to grow. That's the food for them. And that's why it's important. Like some of our Hunger Control Slim, especially, it has a lot of really good fiber in there. We've got it in greens. Yes, good job, Nicole. We've got a lot of those things available. And you might find some people, when they start off with some of those, if they're not used to that fiber, they get gassy and bloating, all those things, because those good bacteria are like, party, we're growing. And they're killing off that other stuff. And they can be a gassy, 2D, weird belly kind of mess. Celebrate with them. You can always calm it back down, slow it down, go a little faster. Depends if they want to push through or if they want to go through a little more slowly. But it's just something to think about if you have people that are kind of in that state. So now we're on to chapter 7, Modern Microbial Disruptors. So it's commonplace to treat healthy people with antibiotics to prevent infections that would only likely occur in a few instances. So I've had a heart murmur in the past, and for years they would give me antibiotics anytime I would go to the dentist. You get them a lot of times when if you're like group B strep positive when you go and have a baby because they don't want to have those issues. If you go in for any medical procedure, guess what? They're going to pump you with antibiotics, even if they're not even telling you. But if you get your itemized bill, it's on there. So the bad thing about that is it's killing off good stuff. Even like when you're going in for a C-section, it used to be just for medically necessary, but a lot of times now it's more out of convenience. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for it, those labor inducing drugs, all sorts of things. And then when your labor doesn't progress like you need to, all of a sudden that baby needs to come out to keep it safe and healthy. And that baby doesn't go through that vaginal canal, that birth canal, and get all of the good bacteria from mom. And then what are they colonized with? They're colonized with hospital bacteria, which aren't necessarily good things. And we see higher rates of asthma, allergies, type 1 diabetes, and other autoimmune conditions in C-section babies. I've seen this firsthand. Taylor was a regular vaginal delivery. She has been really pretty healthy. And then I've got Kinley, God bless her. She was a C-section, and I have had all sorts of issues with that kid. She is my allergy kid. She is my kid who's had multiple infections. She's my kid who gets sick. She is my kid who had major gut issues. She has ADD. She has all kinds of different issues that her sister never had. And I can't not think that her way of entering into the world didn't have something to do with that. So one of the fixes that they have for that, they suggest wiping down C-section babies immediately after delivery with gauze doused in fluids from the mother's vagina to colonize them with essential bacteria. I don't know of anywhere that they do that, but if you're looking at having a baby, that is definitely something that you could have in your birth plan. I would encourage you to do that. Stuff happens, and sometimes you do need a C-section, but something to think about. And then what do we do with babies after birth? We clean them up. We don't want to see them with all that stuff on them. It looks ugly, right? So we clean them up. We get them all pretty. Their skin dries out. They have nothing good on their skin. And guess what? We got kiddos that have problems. So just something to think about. Then we're going to go on to baby formula. So there's a synergy between breast milk and the baby's microbiome. There are indigestible carbs in breast milk that feeds the baby's essential microbes and then repel unfriendly bacteria on the mom's nipple. It's super cool. It's like a symbiotic relationship. And our breast milk actually changes to meet the baby's needs. If you're exposed to different things at times, you're going to produce more antibodies for that. Your baby's going to get more antibodies for it. Super cool. They've found too, formula-fed babies without breast milk have a 20% lower survival rate than breastfed babies. That's kind of shocking to me. That's a huge thing. And again, this is not me trying to be negative to any moms who have formula fed their babies. This is just some science stuff. One of the things that's really come up big is making sure we're not hurting anybody's feelings. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And, we always say fed is best. But unfortunately, I think a lot of times they don't give all of the information to moms about some of the benefits of breastfeeding. They don't go over with moms, the issues when you're having trouble getting a baby to latch or any of those different things, or give them all of the different benefits and consequences of not breastfeeding. And again, it's not to shame the mom or make them feel bad, but we've got to do a lot better job of helping moms, helping them to understand and know and make better choices based on information, rather than when your brain is going crazy after you've just had a baby and you're freaking out because you can't get it to latch and you're feeling like you're starving your kid and you don't know what in the world's going on. So definitely advocate for more information on that. Something that I didn't even think about in formula, one of the big ingredients is high fructose, genetically modified corn solids. Ick. That's not great. I mean, we don't want to eat that as adults. Why are you going to give that to your baby? And then if you've got a baby whose belly isn't working with that, then they give them a soy formula. And my mom, this is what she gave to us. We had tummy issues. In a day's worth of that soy formula, there's the estrogen equivalent of a few birth control pills. Yeah, Do I think maybe that's part of the reason I have the endo issues that I've got going on? Heck yeah, I think so. Um, because that's an estrogen dominant issue. So that's something hopefully I'm going to be able to avoid with my kiddos, just because they haven't been exposed to those things. So again, going back to Kinley's story, I look at her, she was my kid that was eating non-food stuff, right? She ate chicken shavings and she actually got salmonella, right? Fantastic. She was my kid who was banned from the Play-Doh table, all of those things. Her gut was a mess. She didn't get all of those things that Taylor did. So, once we corrected some of the things that were going on in her belly, um, she was fine. She wasn't banned from the Play-Doh table anymore. You know, Taylor, she had a few belly issues. As soon as we got the right probiotics in her, she could eat normal stuff. Even with me, without even taking an iron supplement, once I started to get my gut microbiome under control, my hair quit falling out. My iron levels came up to normal. Those were all things that were based on digestion and the factors that were going on in my microbiome. So the modern mindset is we think we're doing what's best, but we get caught up in all these advances and are often exposed to many unnecessary and even damaging things in the name of progress. So oftentimes we're exposed to all kinds of things that we think are super cool and sciencey, but unfortunately they're kind of damaging. One of those things that we look at is like the appendectomy. Okay, it seems like an organ we don't really need, right? What the world's just do is this little thingy we don't really need, but it houses a whole bunch of extra bacteria for when we need them. So after you've had the stomach flu or something like that, and you've literally gotten everything out of your system that you ever thought could ever be in your body, you're laying on the floor half dead, it'll help repopulate your gut. If doctors go in a lot of times and do a lap for something, it's not uncommon for them to take that out just so you don't have a problem with it later. What in the world? Why do we do that? Don't do that. And one of the things I was talking with my sisters in the past couple of years, what's different? Why have I had a flare in the past couple of years? My appendix was out. Did that mess up my gut microbiome? I don't know, maybe. Um, we also look at women who have a hysterectomy because, you know, they have a couple of issues going on, and the doctor's like, "Well, are you done having kids?" And they're like, "Yeah." "Oh, well, let's take that out. You don't really need that." We need that. It does a whole bunch of things. It's a placeholder in there. It does things for blood flow. It does things for hormones. It's not just an extra organ. And if you think being thrust into menopause in one day isn't going to have an effect on your body, you're off your rocker. So definitely God gave us these parts. Don't take them out if we don't need to. That's something that I've been fighting with doctors about. And if you don't get a good conversation with your doctor, go to another one. You don't have to do things you don't want to do. So more disruptors on the everyday. Hand sanitizers. I mean, how many people have been covering their hands in hand sanitizer for the past 4 years, right? Look at what they are in schools. They're everywhere. You walk into a public place, there's hand sanitizer all over. Kills the good and the bad bacteria. You look at schools, you know, you're trying to wash it. Kids need to be dirty. There's good bacteria. You know, if your kids don't come in from outside or come back from school dirty, something's wrong. We've also chlorinated the drinking water. Even at low levels, that chlorine will kill off stuff. And they've done a lot of different studies. Pull up the studies about what's in your water. You can get them, excuse me, from it's public knowledge. The amount of antibiotics that are in our water, and actually they're finding the amount of hormones in our water is ridiculous. That water has been recycled, whether that stuff has been added or if it's just existing naturally in the environment, who knows? But those are things that are killing off good gut microbes too. Agricultural practices, when they're giving antibiotics to animals to make them grow faster, and I never really thought about this connection, but when you're giving animals antibiotics and you're messing with their gut microbiome, they become fatter, they grow faster. Why is that not going to happen to us if we're eating the same stuff from them? So we are what we eat, guys. when we're getting all of those antibiotics in our systems too, we're leading to to antibiotic resistant bacteria. So then we're running out of ways to use those antibiotics to kill off bad things when we need to save people's lives. Pesticides and other things that we're putting on our plants. Pesticides, thankfully, are not as well absorbed into humans, so that's not as high of a risk. So that's good, right? But one thing that goes on a lot of stuff is glyphosate. That can disrupt metabolic pathways in our microbes. Clostridium and Salmonella are resistant to it. Those are really bad things, guys. But Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium are more susceptible. So it kills off the good things and it allows the bad stuff to grow. And then the more that's in there, that can actually change in our gut. And then those changes in our guts can actually be passed on genetically. So we're creating a whole cascade of effects that don't only just affect us, but also affect our kids. And so many of the different crops are susceptible to this. They kill things off great, but then they have an effect on us. One of the studies that they did actually showed that this Bacillus, oh my goodness, I'm gonna say it wrong. They call it BT. It's a bacteria in the soil that they have modified corn to produce its own insecticide. So that will cause corn to produce its own insecticide. And they found that this BT is present in 93% of pregnant women, 80% of umbilical cord blood in babies, and 67% of non-pregnant women. And that one is definitely transferred to our gut bacteria. It's present in our bodies by genetic and gene transfer, and then it's synthesized in our digestive tract. So it's a bad thing that's happening. So the effects of this one is it also increases antibodies and white blood cells associated with allergies, asthma, and autoimmune reactions. It's also been found to be really common with IBS, food allergies, leaky gut, and dysbiosis. So, you know, we see IBS, we see all these kids with all these allergies, we see all these people with all of these allergies and autoimmune issues going on. Why are we seeing so much of it now that we didn't see before? What is going on? What is going on in our environment? In 2010, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, easy for me to say, recommended that physicians tell patients to exclude genetically modified food from their diets. That was back in 2010. We're in 2014, and if you pick up pretty much any jar or can or anything at the store, you'll see there's genetically modified ingredients in that. What are we doing to our bodies, guys? So the last thing I want to leave you with here is we have to ask ourselves whether how we're living helps or hinders our microbes, because that's what ultimately informs our own health. So something to definitely think about. I'm thankful that we have all of these extra tools to help repair. But one of the things that we always say is you can't out supplement a poor diet. You can't. So definitely looking at all those. So on that note, I would like to open it up for anybody to comment, question any of those things. Y'all are quiet tonight. I must have talked too much. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of good information in those chapters. This book is, like I said last week, fascinating to me, especially someone that's not from the medical background, you know, more engineering and calculations and road designs and things like that. So it's a whole new world. And those questions were really good at the end of that chapter. You know, have you consumed a lot of sugary things? Of course, in college, that's how you live. Probably way too much alcohol in college too, and I'm sure that had a big impact on probably why I have Crohn's now. things, you wish you would have known. And again, thankful that we have a company like Plexus to help right the ship and get our health back on the right path. And then I thought it was very interesting, a couple of those case studies with the gluten-free foods and how they were taking that out of the diet. And I just thought all of that was fascinating. I do have one. Melissa is gluten intolerant, and we did one of those over the counter skin prick tests. Which things are you sensitive to, and gluten did come up as a sensitivity for her, and she knows that. She does have the belly issues, that the bloating, the gastiness, and just not feeling all that great when she has too much gluten. So she's definitely working to get that out of her diet, and doing a great job of that.
It's really interesting you say that about the gluten. They've done a bunch of different studies, and the chemical makeup of the gluten that we have now, is completely different than it was hundreds of years ago. So, would people who are gluten intolerant now be gluten intolerant to the gluten of back then? Who knows? Is it all these changes in that have made it so pro-inflammatory? Or can you, and we know there's several people on our team actually who have been gluten intolerant, with changing their gut microbiome, have been able to add that gluten back in again and not have issues, which is really, really cool to me. So
Band around your knees.
hang on.
Bend in a slight squat.
She's exercising
Out.
here. I can't mute. Thank you. See, we all exercise. It's a good thing. So, yeah, so it's really interesting. I know we've had a couple people on our team for sure who've had to take things out, whether it's been lactose or gluten, and over time and healing, they've been able to add those things back in. So to me, that's really exciting.
The other thing is, if you can find old grain or direct from Italy grains and pastas, there's a couple really good brands that even Walmart sells. Because it's not chemically treated, because it's non-GMO and basically organic, because it's heritage old grain, it does not do the same thing. I even have a few friends with celiac who have traveled abroad and dabbled with bread over there and didn't have issue at all. But yet here, if you eat a piece of Wonder, you're in the hospital. So we've definitely contaminated our food sources horrifically, especially in the last 30, 40 years with glyphosate and a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, Steve, it is a process to find which ones sit well with you.
Well, and the thing that I'm finding really frustrating too is with all of anything that has flour in it, basically, they've enriched it. And for people who have an MTHFR mutation, that's super irritating. So trying to find stuff that doesn't have that is a pain in the butt. And trying to make our own, gosh, my kids, they love pasta, but I bet money that they are MTHFR. They have so many markers for it, especially Kinley. And so I've been trying to make more stuff, but there's only so many hours in the day, and trying to find the best trade-offs, right? It's disgusting how we're not allowed to add stuff in if we want it. It's just magically put in there for us.
Yeah, and I like how Steve put it too when he was sharing. I wish I would have known more about this before. It's just not widely talked about. How many years we went through and ate all of these things without knowing they were hiding in there, knowing what to look. Because, of course, the more you learn, and you learn that these things aren't great for you. So naturally, it's much easier to be like, oh, that's on there. I'm going to make a different swap, much less being very mindful and very diligent about really cutting things out. But, it's easy enough if you have two choices to pick the better one. But if you don't know any better, like definitely through growing up in college years, like I ate a lot of crap and a lot of toxins. And of course, then it, wears on the body and you end up with all these issues that you have to adjust down the road. And even, just not that I've been pregnant super long ago, but going through that journey and how she talked about it with the C-sections, which I didn't have, but even just like breastfeeding and all the benefits, it's not necessarily always talked about the most too, that they kind of assume some of this or just, go on the basics and don't want to overwhelm you with information versus, these things would be really good for people to know to make a better informed decision.
But I think what's also really disgusting coming from like a humanitarian standpoint, when you look at so many of our different demographics that are poorer, right? They're not characteristically given as much information. And the amount of support that they're given with assistance, with formula, with WIC, with all those different things, it seems easy. And if you're like, man, I can make this bottle for my kid. I don't have to be attached to a pump. I don't have to have a kid. I can eat what I want. I went through 9 months of trying to keep my body clean and healthy. I want to do what I want to do. Dang it. They're not giving women great information, especially in those demographics, and it's disgusting. So that I find really, really sick. Yeah. All righty, guys. I'm not going to keep you on here forever, but what I would encourage you to do, definitely talk to people about this stuff. Don't be afraid to share about the food choices, about the gut. It's not just about please buy my products. This is helping people. And that's what we're out there to do. We're out there to give people information so they can make better choices, so they can have better lives. If they want to buy some Plexus in the meantime, fantastic. You can change their health and financial trajectory for the long run, but definitely just giving people information that they might not have known and rereading these chapters. I've read this book a couple of times. There's things in there this time that I got that I didn't get the first time. So thank you so much for hopping on tonight. I always love hearing from you. And we'll see you again next week.